coming from Colorado today, and she's going to share her wisdom and expertise with us. And I'm talking about Holly Anderson here. Great to have you with us, Holly. Let me tell you all a little bit about Holly. She's a process automation expert with over 20 years in high tech and the process automation industry. At Nintex, she leads the product and partner marketing organization and is responsible for the overall go-to-market messaging and positioning for the Nintex process automation platform. Prior to Nintex, she spent many years at K2, a leading process automation company in both product marketing and technical sales roles, and has also held technical consulting and developer roles. So this is a leader who has done it all. And Holly, we're so grateful for you to take the time to share your wisdom and expertise with our global audience today.
Well, thank you so much, Jose. I appreciate that introduction. Hello, everyone. It is great to be here. We have quite the international audience with us today, which is very exciting. And as Jose said, I have been in the process automation space for a long time. I talk to a lot of customers, a lot of organizations who are really trying to find that success in digital transformation and really make sure that they're optimizing their BPM and process automation projects. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and dive right in. This is not a presentation about Nintex, but I did just want to start with really quick context of who we are. As Jose said, we are a process automation and process intelligence vendor. We've been around since 2006. And since that time, we've really helped more than 10,000 customers worldwide with their process management, process automation, and process intelligence needs. And because of that, we've had a lot of experience, a lot of expertise in helping customers make sure that they are as successful as possible. But before we get to the success, let's talk a little bit about why organizations are still struggling to digitally transform. I think we've been hearing about digital transformation, gosh, it feels like almost a decade now since that term came around, and a lot of companies have already started their journey. But we do still hear from many customers, many organizations where they're struggling with several different things in their digital transformation projects. Now, some of these may be familiar to you, whether it's lack of visibility into processes, which really lead to inconsistencies among some of the processes they may be automating. Maybe it's a lack of resources that you have in your organization. As a matter of fact, most organizations are probably running into a lack of those highly skilled technical resources that traditionally were the people who were helping with those automation projects. Now trying to find additional resources to help with those projects is quite tricky in today's landscape. We also hear from a lot of customers just in terms of having maybe a lack of capability in some of the existing systems, existing tools that they've been trying to use. Now, the good news is no matter what challenges you may be facing as part of your process automation projects, there are solutions. There are ways that you can actually overcome some of these roadblocks and some of these challenges. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So let's go ahead and dive right into the first area, which is really going to be focusing on this idea of lack of visibility and how we can get more visibility into the processes we have in our organization. Now, I like to say that it's fine if you want to automate your processes, but if the process is already bad, you're just going to be automating a bad process. And this is very similar to what W. Edwards Deming says here too. If you don't fully understand the process that you're trying to optimize and automate, how is it going to be successful? What are you going to know that's maybe being done wrong? That's really where we want to focus this first piece of guidance that we provide our customers, and something that I think would be beneficial to you all as well. And that is the idea of taking a step back from those automation processes and thinking first about the management of processes. Now, what exactly is process management? I think if you've been in the industry a long time, You've heard the idea of business process management, but it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So what we think of process management is really the practice of improving company performance through managing and optimizing business processes. Now, what specifically does that mean? There's three key areas to process management that we feel like are very beneficial to start looking at. The very first and foremost thing is the idea of making sure that you're discovering what all of those processes in your organization actually look like. Now, there's lots of tools on the market today, task mining, process mining, all of those tools really help give you good visibility into what's happening in your organization. How do people get work done on a day-to-day basis? So really making sure that you first take time to discover what those processes look like. Next, you really want to focus on documenting those processes, making sure that you understand not just what steps are taken across each of the processes, but who's involved. What happens when an exception happens in the process? Is there a different person that's involved? Does it go through a different set of steps? Once you document that and can understand what's going on, that's when you can start to map out what your future state of the process is going to look like. So taking the time to document and then really think about how do you want this process to work going forward. There may be some things that you're doing today that you no longer need to do, maybe once you automate the process, or maybe it's just something that is the legacy way that you've always done processes, but there's a better way to do things going forward. So mapping out that to-be process is also critically important when you're really looking at how to automate successfully. This third step is all about optimizing your processes, similar to kind of mapping out what your future looks like for the process, really identifying those areas that you no longer need to do manually, for example. There may be areas in your process that are ripe for automation. So really identifying those key areas for optimization and thinking about that to-be state. All of this is really going to help drive success once you actually start automating your processes. You have a good foundation for setting things up, making sure you have the visibility into what's happening in your processes, and then really making sure that you're working across all of the different teams who are involved to collaborate on the best possible way to automate and the best possible way you want your processes to work over time. Now, once you've kind of documented those processes, optimized them as much as possible, you're now really ready to identify what are the opportunities that you want to automate. Now, we've been talking about process automation for a very long time now. It's not a new concept, and we all know the benefits that automation can really bring to an organization, especially if you have been doing a lot of your work very manually paper-based. I still have a lot of customers I talk to that are all doing work on email and spreadsheets, even in the year 2022. Sometimes it surprises me how much paper is still around in organizations, but it is still just a fact of everyday life. So why is automation so important even today? I think there's really three key things that we hear from customers as to why they're still focused on automation. First and foremost is just the idea of being able to adapt to changing times, whether that's a changing market landscape, whether that's a global pandemic that throws all of business around the globe off kilter and you have to adjust and find new ways to work, or whether it's just a new system or technology that you're bringing into the organization. All of that is really going to require adaptability in your organization and in your processes. And automation is a great way to ensure that that happens. Next, I think we are still hearing from a lot of organizations that reducing cost and increasing efficiency amongst internal employees is still a key reason to automate. Obviously, this is going to drive a lot of automation, particularly in the robotic process automation space, just by making sure that all of your employees are working as efficiently as possible, but also enabling them to free up time to work on tasks that maybe require more brain power and are not necessarily focused on those mundane, repetitive, everyday tasks. So reducing cost and increasing efficiency is certainly something that we still hear from a lot of organizations today. Third, and in my opinion, probably most important, is really making sure that you can evolve quickly to remain competitive. The landscape in business today is so competitive. Every day it feels like new companies are popping up, new great ideas are coming in, and it can really be difficult for organizations to keep up and make sure that they're staying competitively advantageous. And that's really where automation can help. It's not just about focusing on your internal operations and making sure your employees are as efficient as possible, but it's also looking at those processes that are externally focused, that are customer focused. I think everyone will agree with me that if you have happy customers, loyal customers, you're much more likely to stay in business, and you're much more likely to win that business from other competitors in your market. So it's critically important to really be able to evolve and stay competitive, and that is a great opportunity for automation to come in and help drive that competitive advantage. But not all automation and not all automation tools are the same. And this is one of the things that we really talk a lot to our customers about, is the idea that utilizing more low-code tools as part of your automation toolkit is really going to give you much more adaptability and flexibility over time. Now, if you look at the left-hand slide, the left-hand column of this slide, this is more of a traditional approach. I consider this to be more of maybe a legacy BPM toolkit. Perhaps maybe more difficult to implement. Projects were a little bit longer over time. The cost was usually pretty significant. And the other thing that we typically saw with more traditional approach to automation was that IT did the majority of the work. Really had to focus on those highly technical resources to be able to deliver successful automation. And that's really where low code has now come in and almost changed the landscape of automation completely. And that's really one of the things that Nintex, as a low-code automation provider, is really focused on doing. And there's 4 key things that we really see low-code providing additional value. First of all, just the idea of being really easy to use and being collaborative, so that it's not just IT mapping out and prioritizing those processes, but really getting the business involved, getting the people who work on these processes on a day-to-day basis involved, not just in understanding the requirements, but actually building out solutions themselves. So being able to have those easy to use drag and drop tools that don't require a lot of technical understanding is key to automation success. We've talked a lot about agility and flexibility. The idea of being able to quickly build out a solution using drag and drop tools, but also making sure that you have the flexibility and the agility to connect to lots of different systems that you may have in your organization, whether that's a legacy system or something that's SaaS-based that is new in your environment and you need to connect to that. Being able to have that agility with lots of different connector options, lots of different drag and drop tools is really going to help provide you not just agility in building out automation initially, but also future-proofing your projects going forward. I don't know about you, but I feel like we get new systems and new technologies in our organization almost on a monthly basis. So there's always something new coming in that you have to think about. And having an automation toolkit that provides the flexibility and the agility to work with all of those different systems is critically important. The third key item is fast. We want to be able to build out these automation solutions quickly. within days or weeks, not months and years that perhaps it took with some of the more traditional BPM approaches of a decade or two ago. Now, instead, we're doing quick wins, making sure we're automating things as quickly as possible, but also, again, making sure that we're building for that constant change. Things are always evolving, whether it's the technology that you're integrating with or business needs that you may have in your organization. So being able to quickly make those adjustments and get going again as quickly as possible is important. The fourth and final piece is affordability. Typically, a more traditional approach was relatively expensive. It required a lot of costly consulting, it required expensive technical resources, and often it was very difficult to scale over time. With the low-code approach, we're really focused now on a much more scalable, easy to update solution that really provides a low total cost of ownership, which ultimately drives up the return on investment that you're going to get for your automation projects. So that's really where we see the low-code approach coming in and helping to drive additional value and additional success in your digital transformation projects. If you have not already brought in low-code tools, it's definitely something that I recommend looking at going forward. You'll see a big difference in a lot of the projects that you're trying to automate over time. All right, so we've talked a little bit about some key things to think about when you're first getting started with your automation projects. But what I often hear from customers is, okay, this is all great, but how do I actually get started? What is your recommended approach for taking on these automation projects and then driving them to success? So I have a couple of key steps that we'll go through to talk a little bit about what we see as a successful approach to smart digital transformation. The first thing I'm going to recommend, and maybe some of you are already doing this in your organizations or are familiar with this concept, but it's the idea of establishing a center of excellence for automation. Now, you have a lot of different options here in terms of building out a COE. You could have one single COE that will cover all of your automation capabilities, or you may have individual COEs that are focused on a specific automation technology. For example, we have a lot of organizations that we work with that have an RPA COE and a BPA COE. Depending on how you do it, there's lots of different options, but the most important thing is to have that centralized location, a centralized group of people who can really look across the enterprise, identify some of those key processes that need to be automated, but also really help provide those best practices and recommended approaches for automation so that you have a little bit more of a consistent approach across the entire organization. We see a lot of companies start with automation in maybe one single department, and they do a lot of things in that one single department, but there's so much opportunity to expand that success across department to department to department. And really what we see is as you expand automation out across the organization, you're going to drive much more success over time and get some of those business benefits that we talked about. Reduction of costs, improved competitive advantage, perhaps even a decrease in risk or regulatory compliance issues that you may have. As I mentioned, COEs can be managed together. I often talk to people, if you do have separate COEs, at least make sure that you're working together and coordinating together so that you're always thinking about the right tool and the right capability for the particular automation problem that you're trying to solve. Second is really, we've talked about this, identifying and prioritizing those business automation opportunities. There are probably 100 different opportunities you may be able to think of just off of the top of your head in your organization. But making sure that you're finding those initial quick wins is really going to help drive that digital transformation success over time. It's all about being able to get a quick win, that will demonstrate the capability of what automation can do, and we'll start to be able to socialize the success and the benefit of automation to your organization so that you can start getting additional automation opportunities across the company. Third is really the idea of making sure that you're optimizing your processes before you automate. Now, we talked about this a little bit. It's very key to not just automate everything for the sake of automation, but really think about your processes, optimize them a little bit before you actually start the automation process. The other question we often get in this particular case is, do I have to automate everything as part of my process? And the answer is no. There may be some steps in a particular process that don't really make sense for automation, either at this time or maybe ever. And so it's actually okay to not automate everything in a process and have a little bit of mix of both automation, automating maybe those repetitive tasks that are ripe for automation, and keeping some of those other things more manual or human-based approach. And that's okay, as long as you have a way to easily orchestrate the process between those automated pieces and the manual, more kind of hands-on pieces or tasks that need to be done. That's really where something like a process orchestration tool set will really help, not just automate some of the key maybe human-based tasks, but really orchestrate the interaction between those heavily automated tasks, maybe that are being done by robotic process automation, and the more human-based tasks. As long as you have a good sense of how that all flows and works together, you'll see a lot of success in your organization. Finally, it's all about selecting the right tools. And when I say the right tools, look, I'll be honest, there's a ton of vendors out there in the process automation space. We are just one of many, many. So I'm not saying that the very best thing to do is purchase Nintex. It may not be the best approach. But the most important thing here is to think about, what are the key challenges that I have in my organization today, and what is the right automation tool to solve those challenges? Not just today, though, but also in the future. Really being able to bring in the right tool set for the right needs is critically important, and then always evolving and adapting over time. What we typically tell our customers and recommend to our customers is, a lot of technology is going to do what you need it to do. But really look for those technology vendors that are going to help deliver a partnership and really help you with best practices and work together to drive your digital transformation. It's not always about the technology. Obviously, technology is important, but so are those relationships that you build with your vendor. So find a vendor that is really going to be a partner in your digital transformation journey, along with providing the technology and the tools that you need to solve your challenges. All right, so I've talked a lot about kind of some suggestions on how you can drive digital transformation success. I'm going to end the presentation with a couple of examples of some of our customers that have really taken this approach that I've just talked about and really driven success in their organization. So we're going to start first with Zoom. Now, I think all of you have heard the Zoom story from the pandemic. It was really something where their customer base grew tremendously during the pandemic. Everyone, I think, was using Zoom. My kids were using Zoom for school. But really, that put a lot of burden on their internal operations processes. And one of the key things that they saw is that they were really struggling with their process for processing orders from their channel partners. So they ended up turning to Nintex, and we really helped them with this whole automation journey to really help automate their channel order process and make sure that they were providing the best customer service that they could, not just to their partners, not just to their channel, but then to their partners' customers as well. And what we really saw as they went through this process and automated using our capabilities is that they found a lot of value and were really able to not just decrease all of the roadblocks that they had in kind of handling all of the orders through their channel, but they were also able to grow their channel business because of the automation that we helped them do just on this one order processing project. Since then, they have gone on to identify additional automation capabilities that they are really in the process of automating, and we're seeing a lot of success with them as they go forward. So the idea of using automation to kind of adapt and shift their operational model based on something that happened in the market was one of those key things that I mentioned that automation is really great for. It helps you become more flexible, more adaptable when those market conditions change. Next, I want to talk a little bit about Amazon. Amazon is one of those companies that is using our automation capabilities more internally to help drive employee productivity. And they're using our automation capabilities as a project management automation tool set, really focused on making sure that they have all of their projects kind of managed across every single organization, every single employee in the entire company. So they've been actually utilizing Nintex products for several years now. And since then, they have put through almost more than 4 million different workflows that have driven projects across their entire organization. And just that automation of projects and making sure that tasks are assigned to the right people over time has really driven a huge return on investment for them. And they've seen really great operational excellence across their entire organization because of the automation projects that they've put in place. Finally, we'll talk about Lands' End. For those of you who are international and may not know Lands' End, they are a clothing retailer here in the United States. And they were really looking at a way to help drive automation in their custom order process. So if you're a customer of Lands' End, you can go in and request customized shirts, different apparel that you can use for your own organization. And this is a very manual, kind of time-consuming process for the Lands' End team. So they really wanted to streamline that process, make sure that they were getting orders processed as quickly as possible, certainly to provide a more cost-effective approach, but also they really were focused on that customer service experience. If you know Lands' End, if you are a customer of Lands' End, they are really focused on that customer experience. So this is one of those areas that they really wanted to drive operational efficiency to help drive that customer experience. So again, they turned to our tool set for automating this custom order process. And not only have they seen a reduction in workflow steps, so think about all of that optimization that we talked about, but they've also seen tremendous ROI in automating the process, making sure it's as optimized as possible, removing some of those unnecessary steps, and making sure that they are driving customer satisfaction throughout everything that they're doing in their organization. All of these companies have seen great success in some of the initial projects that they worked on. And as I mentioned, many of them are continuing on and looking at other areas of the business that they can automate and optimize over time. All right, well, I know we only have a few minutes left, so we'll go ahead and open it up for QA. Jose, I don't know if you are still there, but let's go ahead and open it up for questions.
I am still here, Holly. Thank you so much. Great presentation. What a great view of automation. But certainly you went all the way to the foundational principles of design and the process design and collaboration, and then the implications and opportunities of low code. Lots of different questions here. I'm gonna the very first one coming from Trevor Govender. And Trevor, I think you may have answered this, but we can maybe go a little bit deeper on it, on the role of process design. His question is, does process design have a place in IBPM? And I think you talked about that right off the bat, that the answer is yes, it does. But tell a little bit about, there is an inclination of, oh, we have a problem, let's create a solution and let's create an automated solution. And often we bypass the deeper understanding of the processes and how, and how it's actually working. How do you get people to focus on, to not jump to solutions, to not to jump to an automation solution? I mean, it's a tough position because you are kind of an automation support here, but
Yeah.
in a way you tell people to slow down. Let's look at the process. How do you guide people through that process?
Yeah, you're right. It can be very difficult. I think there's so much benefit in automation that sometimes people jump to, we just have to automate everything and it'll be perfect. That's never the case, right? Like I said before, if you automate a bad process, it's still going to be a bad process. So we really talk about the idea of, let's just step back, and we don't have to take a long time, right, to optimize. You can do that over time. But let's first and foremost make sure that we're really understanding what are the steps involved. I think the big thing that people often forget is typically there is what I call the happy path of the process. Maybe 80% of the time it goes through that process. But the other 20%, there's perhaps exceptions that you need to understand. And those exceptions are typically the area where it can trip you up in your automation. So just taking time to at least think about what those exceptions may be will help drive more efficient automation the first time around. But the other thing that we often tell customers is, don't stop there. You need to always be thinking about continuous optimization and improvement of your processes. So see how it goes. Keep monitoring. Think about other ways that maybe can, different areas of the process can be more efficient over time, and make those incremental changes over time. Eventually, you will get a fully optimized process, but you don't have to start with full optimization right out of the gate.
That's terrific. Thank you for that. Michael Andrews has a follow-up question now on focus on identifying the opportunities.
Sure.
What is the best way for identifying the opportunities that you see maybe as best practices in organizations?
Yeah, I think when I first started in the industry, one of the things that we first started on is, what's the biggest, most mission critical process that you can start with? Let's automate and optimize that. And that's often why those projects were several years in the making and were very, very complicated. Instead, what I have seen kind of more success with is looking for some of those quick wins. Now, quick wins are going to be different in every company. Maybe it's something that is just completely manual today, and you just want to improve it a little bit with some automation. That may be a great quick win for you to start with and get your feet wet and kind of get success and see how that is going to change your organization. Another company may be focused more on looking at ways to improve employee productivity first. So they'll start with more of an internally focused process. HR onboarding, for example, is a very common process that we have a lot of our customers starting with first. So it does depend on what your organization's kind of goals are, but really looking for those quick wins, something that you can automate and get some optimization on relatively quickly, is where we see the best success, because then you can build on that success over time.
Well said. Value and speed tend to rule, so that you have to make some trade-off on those elements. Suzanne Corder has a new question here, and she's asking, Holly, how should companies prepare employees to begin using BPM? And do you have any advice for building expertise quickly?
Yeah, that is a great question. And actually, one area that we did not touch on, I could probably do 2-hour presentation just on that change management aspect. It is critically important to make sure that you are preparing employees for the change that's going to happen. And the one thing I will say too is that change management doesn't have to be, hey, Ms. Employee, you are out of a job, right? It's more adapting and changing the way people are going to work and showing them that there's so much benefit in this automation. They're actually going to be able to work on more exciting projects over time. One of the things that we often talk to our customers about is utilizing that center of excellence that I mentioned previously. Really identifying those best practices and having a centralized organization that can help with change management and help roll out the new automation projects. That's really critical in making sure that you are successful. Automation is one thing, but if people rebel against it, it's not going to be successful. So you really have to bring them along the journey. And that's one of the reasons why we talk about at the beginning of the project, bringing those business users, bringing the day-to-day people who are working on these processes, bring them along, help them work on the project themselves. They can help collaborate on design, or if your organization wants to, they can also be part of the actual build process. With low-code tools now, you don't have to be an IT whiz. You can actually be a business user that can help build off the project. So get them involved early on, listen to their feedback, and bring them along the journey over time.
That's an excellent point, Holly, for the next question, which has to do with the centers of excellence and who should be part of the center of excellence. What type of skills, capabilities are you looking for, especially if you're looking to start small in scale? So let's say we're starting small to scale. What are some of the key skill sets you're looking for in that center of excellence?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, what we see in our customers is those COEs a lot of times will start in a process improvement PMO type organization. And I think those folks have a great skill set. They're really looking at optimization of processes on a broad scale. Very, very important to be part of your COE. But the other thing I will say is you can't have a COE that is actually going to drive success without some IT involvement and then also some business end user involvement as well. So having that trifecta of folks who have the different skill sets, I think is important to really drive not just adoption, not just the actual implementation of the project, but also that adoption and optimization over time. So we would say all three of those different types of skill sets are very important. And it doesn't have to be a huge group of people. You can start with just 3 people, one from each of those different organizations, and start small and grow over time. We actually have one customer up in Canada who started a COE with just one person, and he was an evangelist for why this was important, and he really built out a whole COE all by himself, and then eventually added additional people to it, and he was quite successful with that. So it can be done with a very minimal set of staff for sure.
That's great guidance. And one final question here coming from David March about what is your opinion on the process discovery tools? What role do they play? Are they useful? How do you see process discovery tools?
Yeah, great question. I think process discovery is actually very key to the beginning of an automation project, your digital transformation journey, because it provides visibility. I think a lot of times you start to go in and automate a process and you don't actually know what all the steps in a process are. I have been on many projects where there are steps that were completely hidden to us. We had no idea until we rolled out the whole automation and then realized, oh, there's a whole nother group that is actually involved in this process. So utilizing those process discovery tools, whether it's task mining or process mining, really helps at least give you initial visibility into what's happening today. And then you can move forward, automate it, but also optimize over time. So to me, it's kind of a critical piece to the entire puzzle, and should be something that you start with before you kind of dive into automating.
That's terrific. Holly, lots of interesting questions here about how to build these capabilities and grow these capabilities. So my question to you is that what is the best way of connecting with Nintex or with you and learning more and keep building on this journey? Just any resources that you could share with us or contact points that we can have for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always tell people you are welcome to reach out to me at any time, either on LinkedIn, or you can just email me directly. I'm just holly.anderson@nintex.com. But I also recommend going to nintex.com, our website. We have lots of great resources there. We have demos that we can really show you and really connect you with the folks who can help you solve whatever challenges you may have in your organization. Please reach out for sure. As Jose mentioned, I've been in this space for a very long time. I am very passionate about process automation and how it can really help drive success in organizations. So I'm always happy to talk about process automation with anyone.
And Holly, and you speak so well about all this different, related topics to process automation. It's a real gift for all of us to have you here sharing your wisdom and expertise with us. So on behalf of our global audience, heartfelt thanks for taking the time to enlighten us today.
Well, thank you all so much for having me today. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the session. There's a lot of great things coming up.
Thank you very much, Holly. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Holly Anderson, leader of process automation at Nintex, sharing her wisdom and expertise with us. What a great way to get us started here. And we are going to be taking a break. And when we come back at the top of the hour, we're going to bring you another great cross-industry leader of excellence, innovation, and transformation, and the use of intelligent business process automation. I'm talking about Brent Kadzierski, who is a chief industrial futurist. Brent has spent over 20 years at Royal Dutch Shell on some of their most critical global learning transformations and process development. He's going to be sharing his expertise and wisdom with us at the top of the hour. So thank you so much for the great questions, great interaction. I look forward to keeping that up. So we will close the session now, log back on at the top of the hour with Brent Kadzierski.